A mafia boss followed his maid through rain-soaked streets. What he discovered that night didn't just break his control, it started a war that would cost him everything. Alexander Rains built an empire on fear and precision, but when Emily Rhodes walked into his penthouse, she became the one variable he couldn't eliminate, the one weakness his enemies would exploit, and the only thing that could make the most dangerous man in New York lose his mind. What started as obsessive surveillance ended with blood on marble floors and a choice no amount of power could buy. Until Emily Rhodes, a quiet maid with secrets in her eyes, made him break the one rule that defined him. It started days before the street scene. He had noticed Emily long before she knew he was watching. At first, she was just the new maid. The agency sent her after his previous housekeeper retired. Young, soft-spoken, efficient, discreet. He valued discreet. She arrived on time, kept to her quarters, didn't ask questions about the men in tailored suits who sometimes arrived with blood on their knuckles. But then she kept doing something unusual. She smiled at the doorman. She chatted with the cook about recipes. She teased Travis, the driver, about his terrible taste in music. She even made Noah Blake, his stone-faced security guard, laugh about something in the kitchen one afternoon. She never smiled at him. Around other people, she was light. Around him, she was professional, polite, invisible. That irritated him more than it should have. One afternoon, Alex stood in his glass office overlooking the penthouse, on a call with a contractor in Miami, when he heard it again. Her laugh. Not loud, but genuine. He glanced down through the second-floor railing. She was in the living room arranging flowers, saying something to Noah, who was checking camera feeds nearby. Noah grinned. Actually grinned. And she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Alex's jaw tightened. "Boss?" the voice on the phone prompted. "Nothing," he said coldly, forcing his attention back. "Wire the payment." But from that moment, he started tracking her in small ways. What time she arrived. What time she left. The way she hummed softly while dusting the bookshelves. He even noticed that every evening she left at exactly 8:05, like clockwork. On rainy nights, she glanced over her shoulder before slipping out the service entrance, like she had somewhere urgent to be. He didn't like that he was noticing. So when the rain came again on a Thursday evening and she left early, coat buttoned, hood up, moving faster than usual, he was already in the back seat of his black sedan across the street. Jordan Vega sat beside him, scrolling through intel reports. "You want me to send someone to follow her?" "No," Alex said, eyes locked on Emily as she turned the corner. "I'll handle it." Jordan looked up, eyebrows raised. "Since when do you tail staff?" "Since I said I'll handle it." Outside, the city glowed with wet asphalt and blurred neon. Emily walked like someone used to being alone. Fast, aware, but not paranoid. She stopped under a flickering streetlight, checked her phone, and looked around. Then he appeared. "Before we begin, if this story already speaks to your heart, don't just scroll. Subscribe and join our growing family of believers in hope and love. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. We'd love to know." A young man in a hoodie and worn jeans, backpack slung over one shoulder, grin wide and easy. He waved at her. She waved back. And then something in Alex's chest pulled tight. She jogged the last few steps and hugged him. The man's hand lingered on her shoulder. "Who the hell is that?" Alex muttered, voice low and dangerous. Jordan leaned forward. "Could be a boyfriend." That was the wrong answer. The car door swung open. Alex crossed the rain-slicked street with long, controlled strides, black coat cutting through the drizzle like a shadow. Every step was deliberate, every breath sharp with something he refused to name. "Emily." His voice sliced through the night. She froze mid-laugh, turning slowly. Mr. Rains? The young man looked confused. Who is he? Alex demanded, eyes locked on her. Not the man. On her. You followed me? Her voice was barely a whisper. You leave my building at night, meet some man on the street, and don't inform security. His tone was ice over fire. You didn't tell anyone. You just walk out and meet some… Okay, hold on, the young man interrupted, stepping forward. Why are you talking to her like that? Because she works for me, Alex snapped, eyes still fixed on Emily. And I don't like surprises. People passing by slowed, staring. The scene didn't match. A powerful man in an expensive coat confronting a maid and a stranger on a rain-soaked New York sidewalk. Emily stared at him, and then her eyes widened with realization. Oh no. You thought… She pressed her lips together, but laughter escaped anyway. Soft at first, then genuine and bright. Mr. Rains, she said between breaths. This is my brother. Silence. Alex went completely still. What? The young man, tall, scruffy, clearly not a threat, extended a hand Alex didn't take. Jake Rhodes, her brother. I came to walk her home. You must be the intense boss she mentioned. Emily's laughter rang out again, the kind of laugh Alex had wanted to hear from her for weeks, but not like this. Not at his expense. You followed me? She asked, eyes sparkling with disbelief. You actually followed me because you thought I was on a date? Heat crawled up Alex's neck, an emotion he hadn't felt since he was young enough to make mistakes. I misread the situation. Jake shrugged. Happens, man. No, Alex said sharply, voice cutting. It doesn't. Emily wiped at her eyes, still smiling. Well, it happened tonight. For the first time in years, Alexander Rains had no response. He turned and walked back to the sedan, jaw clenched, mind racing. Jordan wisely said nothing as the car pulled away. But as the city lights blurred past, Alex couldn't stop replaying the sound of her laughter, or the way her brother's hand had rested protectively on her shoulder. The woman he'd suspected of betrayal was protecting someone. And for reasons he didn't yet understand, that realization made everything worse. Because now he knew. Emily Rhodes wasn't just a distraction. She was a weakness he couldn't afford, and couldn't walk away from. The ride back to the penthouse was silent, except for the hum of rain against bulletproof glass. Jordan said nothing. A rare mercy. But Alex could feel the weight of unspoken judgment radiating from the seat beside him. Don't, Alex said quietly. Didn't say anything, boss. You were thinking it. Jordan's mouth twitched. You want me to lie? Alex's jaw tightened. He stared out the window as the city blurred past. Neon signs reflecting off wet pavement. Shadows moving through steam vents. The pulse of New York at night. Normally, this view grounded him. Tonight, it felt like mockery. She laughed at me, Alex muttered. She laughed because you deserved it. Alex's head snapped toward him. Jordan held up a hand. You followed your maid through the rain, confronted her on a public street, and accused her of… what exactly? Meeting someone? She doesn't owe you an explanation, Alex. She's not one of your soldiers. She works in my house. That's not the same as owning her. The words hit harder than they should have. Alex turned back to the window, fists clenched against his thighs. He wanted to argue, to justify the rage that had driven him out of the car and into the rain like some jealous fool. But Jordan was right, and that made it worse. When they pulled up to the building, Alex stepped out without a word. The doorman, Carl, nodded nervously and opened the door. Alex barely acknowledged him. Inside, the penthouse felt too quiet, too empty. The marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting. The glass walls overlooked the city like a throne room. Everything was exactly where it should be. Controlled, ordered, perfect. And yet, something felt wrong. He poured himself a drink, scotch, neat, and stood at the window. The rain streaked the glass in uneven lines, distorting the lights below. He took a sip, but the burn didn't settle him the way it usually did. "You followed me?" Her voice echoed in his head, disbelief wrapped in amusement. And worse, that laugh. Bright, genuine, unguarded. The kind of sound he'd been waiting weeks to pull out of her. But not like that. Not at his expense. He drained the glass and set it down harder than necessary. This was ridiculous. He was Alexander Rains. He'd built an empire from nothing, survived wars most men didn't live to talk about, and commanded loyalty through fear and respect in equal measure. He did not get rattled by a maid's laughter. Except he had. Behind him, the elevator chimed softly. Alex turned, expecting Jordan or one of the night security staff. It was Emily. She stood just inside the penthouse entrance, still in her rain-damp coat, hood pushed back. Her hair clung to her cheeks in dark strands. She looked uncertain, like she was deciding whether stepping into his space uninvited was a fireable offense. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I came back to get my bag," she said finally, voice quieter than usual. "I left it in the staff room." Alex nodded once. "It's late." "I know." She hesitated, then added, "Jake walked me to the door. He's waiting downstairs." Of course he was. Protective little brother, making sure she got home safe. Alex hated how much that irritated him. "You didn't have to come back tonight," Alex said, his tone more clipped than he intended. "It could have waited until morning." Emily met his eyes then, and something in her gaze made him pause. She wasn't afraid of him. She never had been. Not really. But now there was something else. Understanding, maybe. Or pity. He wasn't sure which was worse. "Mr. Rains," she said carefully. "I don't know what you thought you saw tonight, but—" "I know what I saw," he interrupted. "Your brother. I got it. That's not what I meant." She stepped further into the room, and Alex found himself tracking her movements the way he always did. The way she moved through his space like she belonged there, even when she shouldn't. "You thought I was meeting someone," she continued, her voice steady now. "And it bothered you." "I thought you were being reckless," Alex corrected, but even to his own ears, it sounded hollow. "No." Emily shook her head slowly. "You thought I was meeting a man, and it bothered you." The silence between them stretched taut. Alex wanted to deny it, to fall back on authority, on the carefully constructed walls he'd spent years building. But something in her eyes, something honest and unafraid, stripped away the pretense. "You work in my house," he said finally, voice low. "I'm responsible for what happens under my roof." "I live in your house," she corrected gently. "But that doesn't make me yours." The word hung in the air between them. Yours. Alex felt something dangerous shift in his chest. He took a step closer. Not threatening, but deliberate. She didn't back away. "You're right," he said quietly. "It doesn't." But the way he said it, the way his eyes held hers, made it clear he wished it did. Emily studied him for a long moment, then exhaled softly. "I should go. Jake's waiting." She turned toward the staff corridor, but Alex's voice stopped her. "Emily." She glanced back. "Next time you leave the building at night," he said, "tell someone. Not because I own you. Because this city isn't safe." Her expression softened slightly. "Okay." She disappeared down the hall, and moments later, he heard the service elevator chime. Then silence. Alex stood alone in the vast, empty penthouse. Rain still streaking the windows, the taste of scotch bitter on his tongue. Jordan's words echoed in his mind. She's not one of your soldiers. No, she wasn't. She was something far more dangerous. Because for the first time in years, Alexander Rains wanted something he couldn't simply take. And that terrified him more than any enemy ever had. The next morning came too fast. Alex hadn't slept. He'd spent most of the night in his office, nursing scotch and pretending to review contracts he'd already memorized. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, laughing on that rain-soaked street, eyes bright with genuine amusement. At him. By dawn, he'd convinced himself it didn't matter. It was a misunderstanding. Nothing more. He'd move on. Emily Rhodes was staff. Replaceable. Forgettable. Except when she knocked on his office door at 7:30 a.m. with his coffee, he knew he was lying to himself. "Good morning, Mr. Rains," she said, setting the cup on his desk with the same professional courtesy she always used. But there was something different now. A wariness in her posture. A careful distance. "Morning," he replied without looking up from his laptop. She hesitated at the door. "Jake wanted me to apologize. For last night. He didn't mean to cause a scene." Alex's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "He has nothing to apologize for." "Neither do I," she added quietly. That made him look up. She stood framed in the doorway, morning light catching the edges of her hair. She wasn't challenging him exactly, but she wasn't backing down either. "No," Alex said after a pause. "You don't." Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or relief. She nodded once and turned to leave. "Emily." She stopped. "Your brother," Alex said carefully. "He seems protective." A small smile touched her lips. "He is. Always has been." "Good." The word came out rougher than he intended. "Someone should be." Her eyes met his then, searching for something he wasn't sure he could give. After a moment, she left, closing the door softly behind her. Alex sat back in his chair, jaw tight. That should have been the end of it. A clean break from whatever madness had possessed him the night before. But when she came back an hour later to collect his empty cup, he found himself watching the way she moved through his space. Careful, efficient, unobtrusive. The way she straightened the papers on his desk without being asked. The way she hummed softly under her breath when she thought no one was listening. And he realized with brutal clarity that nothing was over. It was only beginning. Over the next week, Alex told himself he was being practical. The security upgrade wasn't about Emily. It was overdue. The building needed better coverage, more cameras, tighter protocols. It had nothing to do with the way his chest had tightened when he'd seen her walking alone through the city at night. Reassigning Carl, the doorman, was just good business. The man had been sloppy, letting unauthorized visitors, like Jake, enter without proper clearance. It wasn't personal. Adding 2 more guards to the night shift was strategic. His enemies were always watching. Vincent Marlowe had been too quiet lately. It was only smart to tighten defenses. Jordan saw through it immediately. "You fired Carl?" he asked one afternoon, leaning against Alex's desk with his arms crossed. "I reassigned him," Alex corrected, "to the downtown property. Because he let Emily's brother into the building. Because he didn't follow protocol." Jordan's expression was somewhere between amused and concerned. "You know how this looks, right?" "I know how it looks to keep my house secure." "Your house was already secure, Alex. This isn't about security." Alex's eyes went cold. Careful. But Jordan didn't back down. He rarely did. I'm just saying, you're making moves that don't make sense. People are starting to notice. Let them notice. Emily noticed. That landed differently. Alex's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Jordan sighed. Look, I get it. She's different. But you can't run your life like you run your business. You can't just control everything. Watch me, Alex said flatly. Emily confronted him 2 days later in the kitchen. It was late afternoon, the penthouse quiet except for the hum of the espresso machine. Alex had come down for coffee, something he rarely did himself, and found her restocking supplies. She looked up when he entered, and something in her expression told him she'd been waiting for this moment. Mr. Rains, she said, straightening. Can we talk? About? Carl. The new guards. The cameras you installed outside the staff quarters. Alex poured himself a cup, buying time. Security upgrades. Nothing to concern yourself with. Don't do that. Her voice was sharper now. Don't treat me like I'm stupid. He turned to face her, surprised by her directness. I'm not. You fired Carl because he let Jake in. You added guards because I left one night without telling you. And now there are cameras watching my every move. She crossed her arms. You can't control my life because you're bored. Bored? The word came out like a warning. Or paranoid. Or whatever this is. She gestured vaguely at the space between them. You work under my roof, she continued, her tone shifting into an impression of his voice. I keep my house safe. Despite himself, Alex's mouth almost twitched. Almost. You think this is a joke? He asked quietly. No, Emily said, meeting his eyes. I think you're trying to control something you can't control. And I think you need to stop. No one talked to Alexander Rains like that. Not his men, not his rivals, certainly not his staff. But instead of anger, he felt something else. Something dangerous. Fascination. You work under my roof, he said, his voice low and deliberate. That means I'm responsible for your safety, whether you like it or not. You mean you keep everything controlled? She shot back. There's a difference between protection and possession, Mr. Rains. The word, possession, hung in the air between them like a confession. For a long moment, neither moved. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, the air charged with something neither of them wanted to name. Then Emily shook her head and turned to leave. She made it 3 steps before her heel caught on the edge of the marble transition between the kitchen and the hallway. Alex moved without thinking. His hand caught her elbow, steadying her before she could fall. The momentum brought her close, too close, and suddenly they were inches apart, his hand warm against her arm, her breath catching in surprise. Their eyes met. For one suspended second, the world narrowed to just this. The heat of his palm against her skin, the faint scent of her shampoo, the way her pupils dilated slightly when she looked at him. Then Emily pulled away, flustered. I'm fine. Thank you. Be careful, he said, but his voice had gone rough. She nodded quickly and disappeared down the hall, leaving Alex standing alone in the kitchen, his hand still warm from where he'd touched her. He closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. Protection and possession. She was right. He knew the difference. He just wasn't sure which one he wanted anymore. Across the city, in a penthouse that smelled of expensive cigars and older money, Vincent Marlowe smiled. He sat behind a mahogany desk, fingers steepled, watching the rain streak his windows. Beside him, his second-in-command, a wiry man named Torres, waited for instructions. So, Marlowe said softly, Alexander Rains has a weakness. Seems that way, Torres replied. The maid, Emily Rhodes, works in his penthouse, moved in 3 months ago. And he's been distracted? More than distracted. He followed her through the city last week, confronted her in public. His men are talking. Marlowe's smile widened. In 20 years of rivalry with Rains, he'd never seen the man lose focus. Not once. Rains was a machine. Cold, calculating, untouchable. Until now. Interesting, Marlowe murmured. Very interesting. A knock at the door interrupted them. Torres opened it, revealing a young man in a worn hoodie and nervous energy. Jake Rhodes. Marlowe's smile never wavered. Mr. Rhodes, please, sit. Jake hesitated, then stepped inside. He looked out of place in the expensive office. Too young, too honest, too desperate. I heard you help people with financial problems, Jake said, trying to sound confident and failing. I do, Marlowe replied smoothly. For the right price. You need money? Yeah. A loan. I can pay you back, I just need time. How much time? Jake swallowed. 6 months? Maybe a year? Marlowe leaned back in his chair, studying the young man. He saw the resemblance immediately. Same dark hair, same stubborn set to the jaw. This was Emily Rhodes's brother, the one Rains had confronted on the street. Perfect. I can help you, Marlowe said finally. But I need something first. Anything. Information. About your sister's employer. Jake's face went pale. I don't know anything about Mr. Rains. Emily doesn't talk about work. Then maybe you should ask her to start. Marlowe's voice remained pleasant, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. Tell your sister I said hello. Meanwhile, Alex's empire was showing cracks. A shipment went missing in Brooklyn. A deal fell through in Queens. 2 of his lieutenants got into a public argument outside a club in Manhattan. Something that would never have happened under his watch. Jordan noticed. You're distracted, he said one night, standing in Alex's office while rain hammered the windows. Alex didn't deny it. He stared at the city below, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. It's her, Jordan continued. Emily. You're losing focus. I'm fine. You're not. Jordan stepped closer. And Marlowe's going to notice if he hasn't already. You can't afford to be distracted right now, Alex. Not with him circling. If Marlowe touches her, Alex said quietly, he dies. Jordan frowned. She's not a pawn, Alex. Don't make her one. She's not a pawn. Alex turned to face him, and something in his eyes made Jordan pause. She's the only thing in this goddamn city that feels real. That's exactly the problem, Jordan said softly. Because Marlowe knows it too. But it was already too late. Vincent Marlowe had made his move then, and neither of them knew it yet. Alex knew something was wrong the moment he woke. It was the silence. Too complete. Too heavy. The penthouse had a rhythm to it, a pulse he'd learned to read over the years. The soft hum of the espresso machine at 6:45. The quiet footsteps in the hallway at 7 o'clock. The faint scent of coffee drifting up from the kitchen by 7:15. This morning, there was nothing. He checked his watch. 7:47 a.m. Emily was never late. Alex pulled on a shirt and went downstairs, each step measured, controlled. He told himself there were a dozen reasonable explanations. She was sick. She'd overslept. She'd taken a personal day and forgotten to mention it. But when he reached the staff quarters and found her door ajar, the room empty. Bed made with military precision. That's when the first crack appeared in his carefully maintained calm. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number. It went straight to voicemail. Jordan, Alex said into his phone, his voice clipped. Emily didn't come in this morning. Find her. Maybe she's just... now. 20 minutes later, Jordan stood in Alex's office, his expression grim. Her phone's off. GPS is dead. I sent someone to her last known address, a room she was renting in Brooklyn before she moved here. Landlord says she gave it up 2 months ago. What about her brother? Jake's apartment is empty. Neighbors say they haven't seen him in 2 days. Something cold settled in Alex's chest. 2 days? Jordan nodded. Could be a coincidence. But they both knew it wasn't. Alex moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the city that suddenly felt like enemy territory. His mind worked through possibilities with brutal efficiency, scenarios, threats, patterns. Marlowe, he said quietly. We don't know that. Don't we? Alex turned, and Jordan saw something in his boss's eyes he'd only seen a handful of times. Something dangerous and barely controlled. He's been too quiet. No moves against us in weeks. And suddenly, the day after Jake Rhodes walks into his office asking for money, both he and Emily disappear? How did you... I have people watching Marlowe's building. They reported a young man matching Jake's description 3 days ago. Alex's jaw tightened. I didn't think he'd be stupid enough to actually go. Maybe Emily went with him. Maybe they're just... No. Alex's voice was absolute. She wouldn't just leave. Not without a word. He was right, and Jordan knew it. Emily Rhodes might have been a lot of things, but careless wasn't one of them. A knock at the door interrupted them. Noah Blake entered, his face pale, holding something in his gloved hand. Boss, he said quietly. This was left at the service entrance. One of the overnight guards just found it. It was a cream-colored envelope. Expensive paper. No address. Noah handed it to Alex, who opened it with surgical precision. Inside was a single card, heavy stock, embossed with a familiar monogram. VM. Vincent Marlowe. There were no words. Just an address scrawled in elegant script. And below it, a time. Midnight. Alex stared at the card for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then something shifted. A crack in the facade. A fissure in the control he'd maintained for 20 years. His hand trembled. Just once, barely perceptible. But Jordan saw it. Alex. Find her. Alex's voice was raw, stripped of its usual cold precision. It trembled with something he'd never let anyone hear before. Rage, fear, desperation. I don't care what you have to do. I don't care who you have to bury. Find her. Jordan had seen Alex angry before. He'd seen him cold, calculating, merciless. But he'd never seen him afraid. We will, Jordan said firmly. But you need to think clearly. This is obviously a trap. Marlowe wants you to come alone, to lose your head. Then he's going to get what he wants. Alex, gather everyone. Alex's voice had gone deadly quiet. Every soldier, every driver, every man who's ever taken my money. I want a full sweep of the city. Every warehouse, every safe house, every place Marlowe's ever done business. We tear this city apart if we have to. Jordan nodded and pulled out his phone, but Alex stopped him with a hand on his arm. And Jordan? His voice was soft, dangerous. We end this tonight. The next 6 hours were a blur of controlled chaos. Alex's network activated like a war machine. Drivers became scouts. Security guards became interrogators. Business associates became informants. The entire underworld of New York felt the shift. Alexander Rains was hunting, and no one wanted to be in his path. Reports flooded in throughout the afternoon. Marlowe's usual haunts were empty. His men had gone to ground. Even his legitimate businesses, the clubs, the restaurants, the real estate offices, showed no sign of activity. He'd vanished, taking Emily and Jake with him. By sunset, Alex stood in his office surrounded by maps, surveillance photos, and dead-end leads. His shirt was rolled to the elbows, tie discarded, hair disheveled from running his hands through it. He looked like a man coming apart at the seams. "Nothing," he said, staring at the maps. 6 hours and we have nothing. "We're still looking," Jordan assured him. "We've got people at every... It's not enough." Alex's fist came down on the desk, scattering papers. "He has her, Jordan. He has her, and we're standing here staring at fucking maps." Noah appeared in the doorway, breathless. "Boss, we got something." Everyone turned. "One of Marlowe's low-level guys. We picked him up in Queens an hour ago. He talked." Noah held up a tablet showing surveillance footage. Security camera, 2 blocks from the docks, caught a black van heading into the warehouse district early this morning. "Which warehouse?" Alex demanded. "That's the thing. There are 15 warehouses in that district, most of them abandoned. We're checking them now, but it'll take too long," Alex finished, checking his watch. 8:47 p.m. Marlowe's note said midnight. That gives us 3 hours. Travis burst in, laptop in hand. "I cross-referenced the van's route with property records. Marlowe owns 6 of those warehouses through shell companies. I've narrowed it down to 3 that have recent utility activity. Water, electricity." He pulled up satellite images. "This one, Pier 9. It's the biggest, most isolated. If I wanted to hide someone, that's where we go," Alex said immediately. "Alex." Jordan's voice carried a warning. "This is exactly what he wants. You, walking into his territory. Emotional. Not thinking straight." "I said that's where we go. It's a trap. I know it's a trap." Alex's voice exploded through the room, silencing everyone. His chest heaved, control finally shattering. "I know it's a trap, Jordan. I know he wants me there. I know he's probably got 20 men waiting to put bullets in my head the second I walk through that door." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to something raw and desperate. "But she's in there. Emily is in there. And I don't care if it's a trap or a suicide mission or the stupidest thing I've ever done. I'm going." The room fell silent. Finally, Jordan nodded slowly. "Then we all go." The rain started just after 9. Alex stood in the armory beneath his penthouse, methodically loading weapons. Around him, 24 men prepared for war, checking clips, strapping on vests, murmuring in low voices. It reminded him of the old days, before the Empire, before the penthouse and the power and the illusion of civilization, back when survival meant being willing to do things other men couldn't stomach. He'd built his world on violence, and now he was returning to it. Jordan approached, already armed, rain jacket over his tactical vest. "Everyone's ready. 6 vehicles, full crews. We hit hard and fast. Overwhelming force before they know what's happening." "No." Alex holstered his weapon. "I go in first, alone. That's... If Marlowe sees an army, he kills her before we reach the door." Alex's eyes were cold, certain. "But if he sees me alone, desperate, exactly what he wants me to be, he'll want to savor it, to make me watch. That's when you come in. And if he just shoots you, then you burn that warehouse down with everyone in it." Jordan studied his oldest friend, the man he'd followed into hell more times than he could count. 2 minutes. You get 2 minutes, then we're coming in whether you signal or not." "Fair enough." They moved out at 10:30, a convoy of black SUVs cutting through rain-slicked streets. The city looked different through the tinted windows. Darker, more hostile. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every passing car could be the enemy. Alex sat in silence, checking his weapons with mechanical precision. Glock 19, 2 spare magazines, knife strapped to his ankle, phone on silent. Everything he needed to get Emily back or die trying. "This isn't business anymore," Jordan said quietly from across the vehicle. Alex looked up, meeting his eyes. "I know. Then why?" "Because in 20 years of building this empire, destroying my enemies, taking everything I wanted." Alex paused, the words catching. "She's the only thing that ever made me feel like more than a monster." Jordan nodded slowly. "Then we get her back." "We get her back," Alex agreed. The convoy pulled up 3 blocks from Pier 9, engines cutting one by one. Through the rain-streaked windows, Alex could see the massive warehouse, a skeletal structure of corrugated metal and broken windows, isolated at the end of a crumbling pier. No lights, no movement, just darkness and the sound of rain hitting metal and water lapping against wood. "Could be empty," Travis murmured. "It's not," Alex said with certainty. He could feel it, the weight of eyes watching, the tension of violence waiting to happen. He stepped out into the rain, coat already soaked, gun holstered but ready. Behind him, his men fanned out into shadows, ghosts in expensive suits waiting for the signal. Jordan gripped his shoulder once, hard. 2 minutes. Don't be a hero." "Too late for that," Alex replied, and walked toward the warehouse alone. The chain-link fence surrounding the property stood open, an invitation. His footsteps echoed on wet concrete as he approached the massive sliding door. It stood slightly ajar, darkness beyond, smelling of rust and salt water and something that might have been blood. He could turn back, regroup, come back with a real plan, real leverage, something other than desperation and rage. But then he thought of Emily tied up somewhere in that darkness, afraid and alone, and the decision stopped being a choice. Alex Raines pushed the door open and stepped into the dark. The warehouse was a cathedral of shadows and decay. Rain leaked through holes in the ceiling, creating pools of black water that reflected bare bulbs hanging from chains. The space was massive, easily 50 yards deep, 30 wide, filled with abandoned shipping containers, rusted machinery, and the ghosts of commerce long dead. Alex's hand hovered near his weapon as he moved forward, boots splashing through puddles, eyes adjusting to the dim light. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't show." The voice echoed from above. Alex looked up to see Vincent Marlowe standing on a metal catwalk, hands in his pockets, smiling like a man who'd just won the lottery. "Where is she?" Alex's voice was ice and iron. "Safe," Marlowe replied. "For now." "Depends entirely on how reasonable you're willing to be." "Let her go, and I might let you live." Marlowe laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You really don't understand your position, do you?" He gestured casually, and shapes moved in the shadows. Armed men, at least 15, surrounding Alex in a loose circle. Rifles, shotguns, handguns, enough firepower to turn him into a memory. "You walked into my house, Alexander. Alone. Desperate." Marlowe descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, theatrical. "All because of some girl you've known for 3 months. I have to admit, I didn't think you'd actually be this stupid. The great Alexander Raines, reduced to this." He reached the bottom, stopping 20 feet away. Close enough to talk. Too far to attack without getting shot. "You want her back?" Marlowe's smile widened. "Here's the deal. Your territory in Queens, your shipping routes through Newark, your contacts in City Hall, and a public acknowledgement, in front of everyone who matters, that I'm in charge now." Every word was a knife. Everything Marlowe demanded would gut his empire. break the power structure he'd built over 20 years of blood and sacrifice. "And if I refuse?" Alex asked quietly. "Then Emily Rhodes and her idiot brother die in this warehouse. Tonight. While you watch." Marlowe pulled a gun from his jacket, casually, like an afterthought. "So what's it going to be, Alexander? Your pride or her life?" Behind him, Alex heard the faint creak of metal. His men, moving into position. 45 seconds. He needed to keep Marlowe talking. "You think this ends with me?" Alex asked, his voice carrying through the warehouse. "You think killing her changes anything? The second I'm gone, Jordan takes over. Then Noah. Then 20 others who've been waiting for a chance to move up. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder." "Maybe," Marlowe acknowledged. "But at least I'll know I broke you first. You haven't broken anything." "No?" Marlowe's smile turned cruel. "Then why are your hands shaking?" Alex looked down. He was right. His hands, steady through 1,000 deals and 100 fights, were trembling. Not with fear, with rage. "Last chance," Marlowe said, raising the gun. "Do we have a deal?" "Yes," Alex said quietly. Marlowe's eyebrows rose. "Yes?" "We have a deal." Alex's hand moved to his weapon in one fluid motion. "You die. Here. Tonight." And then the east wall exploded. Jordan's crew came through with tactical precision, shaped charges blowing the service entrance, flashbangs flooding the space with light and noise, armed men pouring in like a flood. Gunfire erupted instantly. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like lightning. Marlowe's men scattered, returning fire, and the warehouse transformed into a war zone. Alex dove behind a shipping container as bullets tore through the space where he'd been standing. He came up firing. 2 shots, center mass, and one of Marlowe's thugs went down. The chaos was deafening. Shouting, gunfire, the ring of bullets hitting metal. Alex moved through it like a ghost, years of violence making his body remember what his mind tried to forget. Another man appeared from behind a pillar. Alex didn't hesitate. 2 to the chest, keep moving. Through the smoke and confusion, he scanned desperately, looking for any sign of her. And then he saw it. Far corner of the warehouse, half hidden behind stacked pallets. A chair. And tied to it, duct tape over her mouth, eyes wide with terror but alive. Emily. Everything else fell away. Alex sprinted across open ground, bullets whining past his head. One grazed his shoulder, hot, sharp, but he didn't slow. Couldn't slow. A man stepped into his path, raising a shotgun. Alex grabbed the barrel, twisted hard, brought his elbow up into the man's face. The thug dropped, and Alex kept moving. Another emerged from shadows. Alex fired 3 times without breaking stride. The world narrowed to a single objective: reach her. He made it to the chair just as the last shots faded to echoes. His hands shook as he ripped the tape from her mouth. Cut the ropes binding her wrists with his knife. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough, desperate. "Did they?" "I'm okay," she gasped. "Alex, I'm okay." Relief hit him like a physical blow. He cupped her face in both hands, needing to feel that she was real. Alive, here. "You shouldn't have come," Emily whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It was too dangerous. You could have been killed." "There's nothing more dangerous than losing you," he said, and the raw honesty in his voice made her breath catch. Their eyes met, and for one perfect moment, the violence and chaos faded away. Then a voice cut through the silence. "How fucking touching." Alex spun, gun raised. Vincent Marlowe crawled from behind an overturned crate, blood spreading across his white shirt, face twisted with pain and hate. He raised a pistol with a shaking hand. "Bon, aimed directly at Emily. "You can't protect her forever, Rains," he spat. "Eventually, someone's going to—" Alex moved on instinct, stepping between Emily and the gun, his own weapon rising. 2 shots echoed simultaneously. Marlowe's bullet hit the concrete wall inches from Alex's head, missing by a hair. Alex's bullet didn't miss. Marlowe fell backward, the gun clattering from his hand, surprise frozen on his face. He hit the ground hard, blood pooling beneath him, eyes going distant. "Watch me," Alex said quietly. For a long moment, no one moved. Rain leaked through the ceiling, pattering into puddles. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Then Jordan appeared at Alex's side, weapon raised, scanning for threats. "Clear. Warehouse is secure. Marlowe's men are down or running." Alex barely heard him. He turned back to Emily, who stared at him with an expression he couldn't quite name. Shock, relief, something deeper and more complicated. "It's over," he said softly, holstering his weapon. "You're safe now." She nodded, then her legs gave out. He caught her before she fell, pulling her against his chest, feeling her shake with exhaustion and delayed shock. She clung to him, fingers digging into his jacket, and he held her like she might disappear if he let go. "Jake?" she whispered against his shoulder. "We found him," Jordan said gently. "Locked in one of the back rooms. Scared, but unhurt. Noah's with him now." Emily's breath hitched, half sob, half laugh. "Thank you. Thank you." "Don't," Alex said quietly. "Don't thank me. This is my fault. Marlowe took you because of me." She pulled back slightly, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "He took me because he's a monster. That's not on you." But Alex knew better. He'd brought violence into her life the moment he'd decided she mattered, the moment he'd let her become more than just another employee, another face in his carefully controlled world. Behind them, Vincent Marlowe's eyes glazed over, rain mixing with blood on the concrete. The war was over. But as Alex stood in the ruins of that warehouse, holding Emily while sirens grew closer, he knew that everything had changed. He'd crossed a line tonight, not just killing Marlowe, but admitting, to himself and to her, that she'd become the one thing he couldn't afford to lose. And there was no going back from that. Days passed in a haze of police statements, hospital visits, and carefully worded press releases. Vincent Marlowe was dead, his organization dismantled, his empire crumbling. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Alex felt hollow. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, watching the city lights blur in the rain. Behind him, Emily sat on the leather sofa, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She'd insisted on coming here tonight, despite Noah's concerns, despite her own exhaustion. "You've been standing there for an hour," she said quietly. He didn't turn around. "I keep seeing it. The moment I realized you were gone. The warehouse. Jordan's face when we found you." His reflection in the glass looked haunted. "Everything I touch turns to violence." "That's not true. Isn't it?" He finally faced her, and she was struck by how different he looked. Stripped of the commanding presence, the cold control. Just a man, exhausted and afraid. "I followed you, Emily. That night after you left my office, I had my driver tail your cab." She went still. "What? I thought you were lying about your brother," he continued, voice rough with shame. "I thought you were working with someone, playing me. So I followed you to that apartment building, watched you go inside." He ran a hand through his hair. "Then Marlowe's men showed up, and I realized what I'd done. Not just invading your privacy, but making you a target. Because I'd made my interest in you too obvious, too visible." Emily's hands tightened on the blanket. You followed me? I told myself it was about protecting my company, about due diligence. His laugh was bitter. But that wasn't it. What I saw that night, you climbing those stairs to help your brother, sacrificing everything for him, it made me lose my mind. Not because you'd betrayed me, but because I realized you could be taken from me. That there were people in this world who could hurt you, and I couldn't control that. The rain hammered against the windows, filling the silence between them. You can't fix yourself by owning people, Alex, Emily said finally, her voice gentle but firm. I'm not a problem to solve or an asset to protect. I'm a person. I know. He moved toward her slowly, carefully, like approaching something fragile. He reached for her hand but stopped just short of touching her. I'm not asking you to be mine. I'm asking you to stay. Not because I can keep you safe. I've proven I can't. But because when I thought I'd lost you, nothing else mattered. Not my company, not my reputation, not my life. Emily looked at his outstretched hand, at the vulnerability in his eyes. Her lips parted to respond. The window exploded inward. Glass erupted across the room in a deadly spray. Alex lunged for Emily, covering her body with his as gunfire tore through the penthouse. The distinctive crack of high-powered rifles, the thud of bullets punching through furniture, the screams of his household staff. Marlowe, Alex breathed, disbelief flooding through him. He's alive! Down! Everyone down! Jordan's voice cut through the chaos as he burst through the doorway, weapon drawn. More explosions, the front entrance being breached, footsteps thundering through the halls. They're coming from everywhere, Jordan shouted, dropping behind the overturned sofa beside them. This isn't a hit. It's an assault. Alex pulled Emily toward the safe room, but another burst of gunfire cut off their path. Shadows moved beyond the shattered windows, men rappelling down from the roof, assault rifles raised. The stairs, Jordan commanded, providing cover fire. Go! They ran, glass crunching under their feet. Behind them, Jordan's weapon barked repeatedly, buying them seconds. Emily stumbled, and Alex caught her, half carrying her toward the emergency stairwell. Jordan, fall back! Alex shouted over his shoulder. But Jordan wasn't following. He stood in the center of the penthouse, a solitary figure against an army, firing with deadly precision. 2 attackers dropped, then 3. Then Alex saw it. One of Marlowe's men, wounded but not down, raising his rifle from the floor. The barrel aimed directly at Alex's chest. Time crystallized, every detail sharp and bright. The rain, the smoke, Emily's frightened breathing beside him. Jordan saw it too. He moved without hesitation, throwing himself across the space, his body intercepting the bullet meant for Alex. The impact spun him around, and he crashed into the marble floor, blood spreading dark across his shirt. No! Alex's scream was raw. Animal. He started back, but Jordan raised one shaking hand. Go! Jordan gasped, blood on his lips. Protect her. That's an order. More gunfire. The attackers were regrouping, advancing. Alex's security team poured in through the other entrance, engaging the intruders. But it was chaos. Smoke and violence and death. Emily pulled at Alex's arm, tears streaming down her face. We have to go. Alex, please. He looked at his oldest friend, the man who'd stood beside him for 15 years, who'd saved his life more times than he could count. Jordan's eyes were already glazing, his breathing shallow. I'm sorry, Alex whispered. Jordan smiled faintly. Worth it. Then his eyes closed, and he was gone. The police came. Paramedics, federal agents. Vincent Marlowe's body was found hours later in a private medical facility, killed by one of Jordan's bullets during the warehouse confrontation. He'd held on just long enough to order one final attack before dying, his last act of revenge. But Jordan was dead. Truly, finally dead. And Alex knelt in his blood-soaked penthouse, realizing what his obsession had cost. Weeks later, the rain fell again. The same city, the same lights, the same street where Alex had once followed her. Emily stood on the sidewalk outside her brother's apartment building, coat buttoned against the cold, eyes wary but full of something deeper. Understanding, perhaps, or forgiveness. Alex approached slowly, the powerful man now stripped of all pretense. No bodyguards, no armor, just him, in a rain-soaked coat, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. "Jordan left me a letter," he said quietly. He knew what I was becoming, what I was doing to you. He wrote that if I survived him, I should remember that love isn't about protection. It's about trust. Emily's breath caught. "Alex, marry me," he said. The words fell like stones, heavy and irrevocable. "Not because I deserve you, because you make me want to. Want to be better, different. Want to feel something other than control." She studied him for a long moment, rain dripping from her hair. "Love isn't control, Alex." "I know," he said softly, and his voice broke just slightly. "That's why it terrifies me. Because I can't force this. Can't manipulate or strategize my way into your heart. I can only stand here in the rain and ask." Around them, the city moved. Cars splashing through puddles, people hurrying past under umbrellas. Life continuing indifferent to this moment. But for Alex, the world had narrowed to her face, her eyes, the small movement of her lips as she considered his words. She smiled faintly, something sad and hopeful mixing in her expression. Then she stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "Then let it," she whispered. "Let yourself be terrified. Let yourself be human." She kissed him there on the rain-soaked street, and for the first time in his life, Alexander Rains surrendered completely. Months later, laughter filled the Rains estate, something the staff hadn't heard in years. Grace Turner returned, her absence explained away by a family emergency that everyone politely chose not to question. She moved through the kitchen telling stories that made the younger staff blush, while Emily brought warmth to every corner Alex had once ruled with silence. The gardens bloomed again. Windows stayed open. Music drifted through halls that had known only quiet efficiency. One morning, Alex found Emily in the library, sunlight streaming through the windows, a book forgotten in her lap as she gazed out at the grounds. He stood in the doorway, watching her, but this time she felt it immediately. "Still following me, Mr. Rains?" she asked without turning, amusement in her voice. He crossed the room, settling beside her on the window seat. "Always," he admitted, but there was no darkness in it now. Only honesty. She leaned into him, and he wrapped his arm around her, marveling at how simple it was, how easy when you stopped fighting. "I saw Jake yesterday," she said. "He starts his new job next week. Real one this time. Legitimate. He wanted me to thank you again." "He doesn't owe me thanks. He knows, but he gave it anyway." She looked up at him. "That's what people do when they care about each other. They say thank you. They let themselves be vulnerable." "I'm learning," Alex murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. Far across the city, in a boardroom that had once hosted Vincent Marlowe's criminal empire, federal agents boxed up evidence, bank accounts frozen, properties seized, associates arrested. The underworld was restructuring, scrambling to fill the power vacuum. But Alexander Reigns wasn't part of that world anymore. Because when Alexander Reigns fell in love, he didn't just lose his mind, he rewrote the rules of his world. And this time, he wrote them with someone else's hand in his. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly loved it. Even if you're watching on your TV, take a moment to join this growing family of fans who adore emotional, heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it's what helps us keep bringing you more unforgettable tales like this one.